Hi, and welcome to Yeshiva Shemever. I'm Rabbi Katz, and you are listening to the first class of Psalms in Depth. This is our inaugural class of this series. We just finished a year's worth of Parsha classes in Yeshiva, our first year completed, and we've gone through the Gear series. I urge everyone to check that out. It's basically, if anybody has a question about what is a ger, it's in that series. So I know there's a lot of new people around the cyber world, even the virtual world, that wants to know what is a ger. I think the best answer to give is to start with ger number one. And I think just the word ger might be a bit daunting to somebody that doesn't even know what it means. But that's the point of the ger series, is to get people over that hump. And we began after the ger series with the Thinking Shabbos series, which is the idea of once one knows what a ger is, the next logical step for most people is, what about Shabbat? And as I saw that the tempo was pretty high octane, again, not giving much leeway for a beginner to come in, decided to stagger the Shabbos series with this in-depth Psalms, i.e. in Hebrew, Tehillim series. And I think we're going to go with Tehillim more than Shabbos. But we're not done with Shabbos. We did, I think, 2 classes, and I will periodically revisit that issue. But I think it's a good change of pace for a while to get into King David and Psalms. And that's why we're starting with Psalm number 72. Psalm number 72. By the way, questions, comments, or feedback, I can be reached at Rabbi Katz at virtualyeshiva.com. And again, this class is Wednesday nights at 11 p.m. Sfat time. And the Parsha class, I'm aiming for the article posted on Sunday, class on Monday. But I urge and stress to stay posted at all times through email. Your name should be on the mailing list, because the goal now, after we completed the first year, is to put out a good product as opposed to a mandated time frame. I want the part of the Parsha article to be really good. If it takes a couple extra days to do it, I think it's beneficial. So at this point, we're really trying to find the truth to the Torah with the ger, the Jew, whatever the truth may be. And with that said, I think that the Tehillim class Wednesday night becomes the main entree of Yeshiva Shemever. The Parsha class will be there every week, and it's in the works to make a Tuesday night Midrash Rabbah on the Parsha discussion group in the Yeshiva classroom. So stay posted for details of that. The Tuesday night, again, so the week would look like a Sunday article, a Monday or Thursday Parsha class, a Tuesday Midrash Rabbah study group, a Wednesday Psalms or Shabbos discussion, and if class is not on Thursday, that would be an open night for basically Skype conversations, tutoring, counseling on Noahide issues. I'm available, basically, and for also Mazel work on Thursdays. And Shabbos Kodesh, study away. Okay, I think that's all the issues I wanted to discuss. So let's go ahead and start. There's one other thing I wanted to say. Noah Jr. Everyone has kids. Noah Jr. age, just by connotation, we can probably understand what that is. Figure 8 to 15, right? I think would be an appropriate age. Look for the Noah Jr. series. We've done 3 of them so far, and we're going to hopefully keep putting them out on a more frequent basis with intentions of covering the entire Torah. It's an interesting, fun, even quirky series for kids, so check it out. They're all posted on the YouTube page under Sol Mazal. And now we're ready to get into our new series. I don't want to. I really don't want to call it Psalms. I just don't feel comfortable with it. It's Tehillim. So if I just don't want to say Psalms. For something tells me not to do it. So Tehillim. Tehillim is Psalms in Hebrew, but let's call it Tehillim. This class series will be dedicated, and it is dedicated, but the exact nusach of the dedication is not brought down yet. Let me just give a bit of background. And Psalm 72 we're starting with is going to be probably broken up in 2 or 3 classes, which by the way will probably be the nature of every psalm, unless it's like an 8-verse psalm. In that case, it's one class. But for example, 72 is 20 verses. Anybody that followed my Song of Songs series, which we did every pasuk, every verse of Song of Songs, to the tune of over an hour, that's over 100 hours of lectures. King David and King Solomon are extremely dense. Extremely, extremely dense. And the point is to do it thoroughly and in depth. In Hebrew, it's called Be'iyun. So with that said, there's going to be a lot of information coming out. And the point is to explain the content. In Song of Songs, in those days, it was from a yeshivish background. Nowadays, it's the header is universal Torah. So I spoke with a very thick Ashkenazi twang, and we're avoiding that for this series. So anybody that found the Song of Songs, you're gonna have to wade through yeshivish jargon, and that will not be the case with Tehillim, other than the fact that I call it Tehillim. I want it to be very, very clear universal Torah. So I don't know how fast we're gonna go, or how much, what the rate will be. Let's just play it by ear. So you're gonna find that if you find a posting, it might be 2 or 3 classes per Tehillim group. So look for the symbolism in the titles and such. Now, just for a bit of background, this class has been in the works for over 2 years. When Sul Mazal, the vision of Sul Mazal was originally initiated in 2011. It was spawned by a lot of different events, I guess both in my life and in the world. And I was doing the Sul Mazal names. That's how it started. It was kind of a fun endeavor with the blog, for those that saw the original days of the blog, in the days of Shirat Devorah, when the Mashiach blogging was at its peak and apex. And it was a very exciting time. Did all the Zohar calculations and speculations, and even the big Gedolim in the world, the big rabbis were into it too. I remember Rav Kanievsky would come out with things, and Rabbi Cook and Deveria it was an interesting time in I guess relative history. And it was approached to me if I would be interested in learning Tehillim. And when I was becoming a Baal Tshuva, one of my first things I wanted to do was learn Tehillim. I'm saying if King David wrote Torah, let's learn it. To a young Baal Tshuva kid, it was pretty obvious that, to me, that would be a worthwhile thing to study. And I didn't know Hebrew. I didn't know much. And I sat down at the kollel to learn with my partner. And we tried. He was a learned guy, but we didn't really get anywhere. It didn't launch. I couldn't keep my weight of it, obviously, and he struggled with the Hebrew. And I think whatever it was, it might not have been so appropriate to do the Mikros Gedolos, which I've said before. The Mikros Gedolos are the super commentary on Tanakh. Right, the book that contains basically every classic commentary on everything written in Tanakh. So he didn't bring that book out, and I don't even know if I would have understood it. So it wouldn't have mattered. We had whatever it was, a very maybe Rashi at best. I don't even know. But we didn't launch, and he probably felt that as a beginner I shouldn't be involved because it was all Hebrew. It wasn't really meant to be English, and it was a Kollel style and yeshiva style. So I dropped it and ended up going. Everything worked out. Went to yeshiva, everything. So it never left my consciousness that I really wanted to get into this and know what's going on. It just occurred to me that the praises of God were not just empty praises, but there was a lot of Torah involved. And then in yeshiva years, it was told to me that King David knew a lot of Torah, and I think I started to doubt. Because you don't think of a Tanakh character or even a Tanakh work as being Torah when you get into yeshiva. I know it's an oxymoron, but that's kind of like, I think, a bad habit. Is when people get into Talmudic study, you get into the law and the oral Torah so much, you forget that random and opaque works are actually Torah rich. I mean, how many people study Job? And that's one of the biggest tragedies of all time. Because Job is, when you get into it, you see it's one of the most referenced works we have. When a major midrash or whatever is proving a point, oftentimes they'll pull from Job. And many times they'll pull from Job. And no one learns Job. It just, Song of Songs, Rashi says, is the Holy of Holies. How many people learn the Song of Songs? And King David is the biggest travesty of all. It's in 15 years of yeshiva, I never saw once somebody sit down and study Psalms as a way of Torah. And it was kind of bothersome. And again, you forget that Samuel and Kings are Torah savvy works. And I think it's because the language is what we're calling the code. And it shouldn't even be code. It's pshat. It's literal. We're going to get into this in Tehillim. If King David says the word goy, or am, or umim, those mean something. Those are not just an empty English language of trying to find a really slick word to use to not prove a point, but to sound intelligent. The words mean something. And that's what the commentaries get into, is what does this particular word mean? And it's a different style of code word usage than in Talmudic study. In Talmud, there's code also. Not every word is translated in the Talmud. For example, if we say Kamash Malan, right? David woke up at 6 in the morning. Kamash Malan, he went to go daven. Kamash Malan means we hear out, but maybe not even so literally. You just know when you see Kuf Mem Lamed in the initial letters and the anagram are what do you call the initial letters? It means Kamash Malan. And Kamash Malan means Kamash Malan. We hear out. You go to any yeshiva in the world, they all translate Kamash Malan the same way. It's an Aramaic idiom. And every Baal Tshuva kid says, what does Kamash Malan mean? And they all say, we don't know. Or it basically means, no one's into what it actually means. It's like saying, what does the word the mean? Nobody will tell you what the means. It means the. And the Talmud's filled with these things. The word ha is a word. Ha-zeh, ha-zeh. There's this and there's that. But the word ha is not exactly translatable. And if it is translatable, no one uses it according to its translation. So that's just like the body is, what we say, 90% water, the Talmud is probably 90% code. And you go to yeshiva to learn what the code means. And then you read the Talmud according to the code. And then when you become equipped in Talmud, you can derive great depth in meaning when mastering the code. Because then it's like driving and following the signs in the road. you know how to drive the car. You know how to drive the Talmud. And you gain a mastery of Talmud. Then you can change the enunciation in your voice. This is the idea of the Torah of the Vilna Gaon. Instead of saying there's this and there's that, Vilna Gaon might say there's this and there's that. It's like very yeshivish. You get into the semantics of the voice. There's all the different things. There's this and there's that. There's all the different ways, and it conveys meaning in how you read it and how you articulate it in your voice. And that's like really the beginning of the Talmud and how it goes infinitely. So the Tanakh has its ways also. There is a world of Tanakh learning. As the Noahides will like to do, I think, innately, and on a soul level, is connect the dots of the Talmud. Of the Tanakh. King David did this, then he did that, and then he did this, and then there was Yoav, and then there was Avner, and then there was this guy. What does it all mean? And the yeshiva world doesn't get into let's call it the code. The code is, for example, when King David in the Tanakh is dealing with an Am, it just means what? The people? What people? And there's a tradition. What does the word the people mean? Oftentimes it is the Gerim of the land. Now that's the code of Tanakh. And then name changes. What do names mean? Because in the Tanakh, a name will convey meaning to the simple meaning of the verse. In the Talmud, you might not get into such detail. I know in the academic world, they do. They'll say, if Rabbi Meir said this, well, he was living in this time period. I mean, it's not the classic way of learning it. And even from a Mazal standpoint, if Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Akiva said something, it doesn't always weigh, as foundation principle number one to look at, why is the name Rabbi Akiva saying that 3 Amos of the Rosh Hashanah, it's Asr the carry. I mean, this doesn't come in. Not in a spiritual way of exegesis. But in the Tanakh, it does. If we're saying David does this and he's talking to Avshalom, it's a big deal. So the point is that Tanakh needs to be learned more. The prophet way needs to be learned more. And it contains the secrets of Judaism. Or let's call it Israel. Israel proper, the four-headed shin that contains Gerim. It is the quintessential work that contains Gerim. In fact, there are no Gerim if there's no Tanakh. And because there's no Tanakh in yeshiva, what's the logical result? There are no Gerim. In the mind and psyche of 99.9% of the universe, there is no ger. But in the psyche of the Tanakh, it is not 99.9 anything. It's 100% is, was, always will be gerim. And King David's work is the total. If you want to say that of King Solomon's works, Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies, then King David's Tehillim is the Holy of Holies of the Tanakh in the category of encapsulation of the Ger topic. I mean, that's really King David 101. If anybody defines and carries the testimony of the Ger, should it not be the one who called himself a Ger, i.e. King David? And he does. And this is what this class is about, and this is why I decided to teach it now. Because King David is, not only is he the Messiah, right? Ezekiel says very clearly, I will raise another David for you in the end of days. But he is the one with the Torah of the Messiah, his Torah. And his Torah is about the essence of Israel. Not just the embodiment of a people, but those that are attached inside the people, the land of Israel vis-a-vis the world. King David, as sitting in the gates of Jerusalem, saw the entire world, because that's what Jerusalem is. That's what Zion is. It is the viewpoint, observation point of the universe. If you sit on Zion, you see the world. And who did David find on Zion? Aravna, the Ger Tzedek who did not convert. Now, some would say it's a coincidence, it's an accident, just happened to be. Well, that's the miracle of Tanakh. In the Talmud, yeah, just some guy, goy named Ravna, never heard of him. Keep going. Tanakh, you say, who? Aravna? What's he? Who's he? Wow, his name is the same letters as the Ark, Ha'aron? Now that's pretty interesting. And King David found him at Zion? And you read the commentaries and you say, a ger what? A ger tzedek. But it doesn't look like he converted. He didn't. Well, that's strange. I was told that a ger tzedek is a convert. And enough of these little gems you find out there's a whole world of ger out there. Maybe I'll start thinking there's a world of ger out there today. Now, it doesn't, just like in the Tanakh, they didn't go around saying with the name tag, hi, I'm Ger X and I'm Ger Y. So too today, we don't walk around with name tags, I'm Ger X and I'm Ger Y. You might not even know the word Ger or know to call yourself a Ger, but deep down, the resonance of what David saw in Aravna at Mount Zion might be the same kind of thing today. A type of person you find, and deep down in the soul, he's saying, I'm a ger. So the message of King David is that universal, complete Torah, the ger, the Torah of the Messiah. David saw the end of days through the ger. Because the ger has a perspective of Torah that's not one-dimensional. That's why the Gerim attached to Israel. They're a part of Israel. The missing, let's call it code, if you will, is in the Ger. And the Tanakh is written according to that. So this class was then instituted around feeling the nature of that topic. I'm just now receiving the name of the person this class is dedicated to. As I said, it was approached to me to dedicate this class when the Soul Mazel project started. And I was asked if I could learn and read, recite, master, whatever, Tehillim. And I maybe revisit all the old things that I thought of in the days of becoming a Baal Tshuva. And as I said, I always wanted to learn Tehillim. So I agreed to start, and that was 2 years ago. And I told those that were involved in the project, this is not going to be done in 30 days. I'm not doing this for 30 days from now to tell you, yeah, I learned Tehillim and it was great and it was awesome and nice knowing you. I made it very clear that this was going to be a very, very long-term project. Not done in 30 days. And it was going to be emphasized to learn it in depth. So I started. Psalm number 1. I'll just tell you the first thing I found in Psalm number 1. Where I think we all know how Psalms start, right? Starts with, let me find it. Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach ba'atzis rashoyim. Praiseworthy is the man that doesn't go in the counsel of the wicked. And as you know, as the nature of the learning that I like to do, which was what Soul Mazel is predicated on, which is pardes, pshat remez drush sod, simple meaning hint, allegorical in the secret, which is the method of learning midrash and basically Tanakh, the style of the Vilna Gaon. If you look at the end letters of Ashrei Ha'ish Asher Lo, praiseworthy is the man that does not then walk in the ways of the wicked. With the main word that starts the verse is Ashrei, praiseworthy. And as the introduction to basically anyone that writes on Tehillim will tell you that the introduction is based on the word Ashrei. You know, King David chose the word Ashrei, very similar to how the Torah begins with Bereshit. That you can say that everything is in Bereshit. The whole Torah can be encapsulated in Bereshit. The word, the very first word. And there are 5 books of the Torah of Moses. There are 5 books of the Torah of David. David is the student. Moses is the teacher. Moses is, we say Moshe Mashiach, and David is the Messiah. Then you get the Kabbalistic works to explain it's the soul of Moses that has the kingdom capacity in it, and it can contain the kingdom of David. Now that you have basically David and Moses intertwined, how does it come about to be Mashiach comes? And all the Mashiach Torah comes from that. Resolving the first paradox of how is it David and Moses, and then you're getting into souls and reincarnation and a lot of different things. The point is that Mashiach is not simple, but it is simple. It's not simple, but it's not complex. It has a lot of parts that go together. Is a puzzle simple? I think so. My son's 5 years old, and he does puzzles all day. I love the guy, but he's not quite yet Einstein. He's 5 years old. There's a lot of parts, and they're little parts, and it takes time to do it. He works on it for hours, but in the end, that 5-year-old little boy does the puzzle. And it is simple. It makes a nice picture when it's done. Winnie the Pooh, we all see it. It looked very, very complex. I don't know where this goes. There's a lot of pieces. You don't just, every piece you find, you put it together and bam, you got a puzzle. But if you sit down, what does he do? He decides to sit down. That's step number 1. He decides to sit down. He looks at every piece. He turns them around and makes a decision to start with one. And then he looks for the connecting piece. And this goes on and on. In the end, he has a puzzle completed. It looks like it's nearly impossible just from the naked eye, no matter who you are, what age you are. And then you put it together and you have a nice puzzle. It's Winnie the Pooh. He constructed Winnie the Pooh. And that's I don't know if that's so much Torah, because I think Torah can be learned in any capacity, any style. Just sit down, learn, and I don't think you have to make Chedushim, Novelli, and understand the universe. I think Torah is divine enough and blessed enough that you can just learn it. But if you're interested in vision, connecting dots, really understanding God, the Torah of Mashiach, the concept of that is where you have to start putting it together. You have to start building. You might even call that building the Beit HaMikdash. If anybody read the article on Parshas Truma that I wrote. And that really begins, it can begin anywhere, but for all intents and purposes, David and Moshe, 5 books of Torah, 5 books of Psalms. And you have a contradiction or a paradox. How do you tell me David's the Messiah if Moses is the Messiah? And I have to believe that is not an argument in Hebrew, a machlokes, or a contradiction. I cheated. I used an Ashkenazi word. I'm sorry about that, Joe. I said I wouldn't, but I did. And then you resolve it. And you're going to have to get into the Hebrew and find out which famous rabbi is going to resolve this for me. How do I pick? How do I know who to pick? So I'll start. My rabbi said I should read the Chafetz Chaim in English. I read the Chafetz Chaim and he doesn't say anything. And then I search on Google, contradiction, Moses, David, Messiah. And who knows what I'll find? Could be some Messianic Jewish rabbi, Yashkanik. Who knows what I'll find? And you find, maybe they support the argument. Maybe they want to resolve it. The bottom line is there is an answer to resolve it. And you have to really go with your neshama and find what resonates. And you don't have to hit a home run right away. But there are resolutions. And for this resolution, you can turn to the Or Chaim in the Parsha Vayechi, in Jacob's blessings to Judah. Jacob says, if you remember, Ad ki yavo Shiloh. Until Shiloh comes, will Judah be blessed. And we know that Judah has the kingdom. But then they'll say Shiloh is the gematria Moshe, in reference to the King Messiah. So the Or Chaim says, how could it be? How could it be? We know it has to be Judah. It's the soul of David contained in the soul of Moses. And Shiloh, what is a Shiloh? Then they'll say, go look in Sanhedrin 98. 4 names to the Messiah. Shiloh, Yinon, Menachem, and I think about Hananiah or something. You put them all together, their initial letters, it spells Mashiach. The Lubavitchers will say, you see? Menachem Mendel, Schneerson. And that's a famous one. And in our verse today, well, we're not probably going to get to it, but in 72, Tehillim actually mentions, in reference of David to King Solomon, calls him Yinon. And that's one of the names of Messiah. And they say it's a hint to Moses. Because in Aramaic it means fish. And Moses is linked to that for several Kabbalistic reasons. So you see that once you inspect these issues, they can start to gradually come together. You do have to know where to look, and that comes only from time, experience, success, and failure, and patience, and diligence, and a lot of those little life lessons, you might even call them the Torah of Shem. Learning those little lessons, wait a little longer, parables and idioms we hear. Patience is a virtue. And they are. And if you really are interested in knowing these things, they don't come after 2 weeks. It might be 2 years. You might sit on one question for 2 years. And that's called Amelis of Torah, the toil and labor of the Torah. And they'll say, but only Jews can do that. Well, not true. If you sit on a topic for 2 years, and it comes and you put it together, and you own that, how do you then tell that person, nah, you don't really own that? Impossible. By the way, that's a contradiction to Bava Kama that says even a Nachri that learns Torah is like the high priest. So you need to resolve these issues. But the Goyim cannot learn Torah. It's against stealing one of the Noahide laws. And if you do, the death penalty is upon you. Well, that sounds a little intimidating. Then you research that topic and you find out no one even said that. They said you're accountable by the hands of heaven. And that's only if you're doing it to, let's say, get back at somebody. So the things are taken out of context and just distorted. It is all part of the Sitra Achra to keep people from understanding these things. But again, if you persevere, and perseverance will draw what's called klippus amolek, the opposition from the other side. And they'll tell you no, and you're wrong, and my rabbi told me it's David, and my rabbi told me it's Moses. And they're arguing, and our rabbis argue all the time. So if rabbis argue, my rabbis can beat up your rabbi. That's what rabbis do. They beat each other up. If we can see beyond that, which is what David's Torah represents, see beyond all of that, then they'll start coming together. Then the connections start to come. And again, that's why David starts with Ashrei. It's that David-Moses union, and we can understand it. And I remember, this is, whatever you call it, a root soul thing. One of the first things I ever found in this style of learning, I say it because when I tell people this Kiddush, they like it. I never liked it probably till this day. I didn't realize what it was until now, ironically. You know the idea that the Torah starts with a beit of Bereshit. And then it ends with a lamed of Yisrael. You guys heard about that? You put the beit and the lamed together and it spells leiv, which is heart. And I'm sure, once you say that, the beginning and end of the Torah spells heart, it's pretty obvious what the connections are going to be. Right? The heart of the Torah, the heart of God, heart of man, united with God. Then you say leiv 32. The heart is the gematria 32, which is the gematria kavod, which is honor. So then you say, circumcise your heart, the honor of God. I mean, the connections are endless. Endless. Kabbalistically, you can say it's the 32 pathways of the intellect, through the 32 names, mentionings of the name of God, Elohim, through the creation story. So again, it's there for the taking. It is that Rui, prepared. Rui means prepared in Hebrew. It's just there. Just take it, do it. Which then I thought, as a young Baal Tshuva kid, what happens if you take, and this is not, I wouldn't use this as a rule of remez per se, but it was just one of those things that my neshama wanted to do, which again shows where you want to go when you first start. I had an inclination to go there, and I did, and I'm still going there, but in a much more disciplined way. So if you have a pull of your soul to do something, in a deeper exegesis of it, then do it. Don't be told no. If you like gematria, fine. If you don't, then don't. But if you have a pull or a gravitation, you like midrash, you like halacha, you like minhag, then do it. Don't let people tell you no. I think that was, if I had one bracha in my learning, it was that what I'm about to tell you, no one hit me over the head with a hammer and said, don't do that. It was I took the letters of Bereshit and the letters of Yisrael based on this lamed beit, beginning and end. And I said, what letters are in common between Bereshit and Yisrael? And the letters in common spelled the word Ashrei, Aleph, Shin, and Reish Yud. Right? It's in Bereshit and it's in Yisrael. And I said to my rabbi, I said, what does it mean? What does it mean? Is this the secrets of creation? What does it mean? He said, I don't know. Praiseworthy is he who learns the Torah? I don't know. Well, ironically, nobody ever finished the story and said, go learn Psalms, because King David opens up with Ashrei. Okay. Now, fast forward, 20, 15 years later, it's kind of a long way to get to the story, but if you look at the end letters, Ashrei ha'ish asher lo, praiseworthy is the man that does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. It actually spells Ashrei again in the end letters. The Yud of Ashrei, the Shin of Ha'ish, the Reish of Asher, and the Aleph of Lo. So I thought, wow, how fantastic is that? The commentators state that Moses ends the Torah with a wave of praiseworthy. If you keep the Torah, blah, 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 you'll be praiseworthy. And then they say that David picked it up right there and continued where Moses left off. They went right back to Ashrei. And then David encloses in the first verse another Ashrei at the end letters. So I found that to be quite amazing. And then I realized after finding that, I said, wow, if that's no way it's an accident. The whole book is based on Ashrei. And King David encloses it in the end letters right away. And they say that Song of Songs is Solomon's take of David's Torah, along with the forefathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And the reason why Song of Songs is the Holy of Holies, and the reason why you can get, let's say, the inspiration of the Holy Temple out of it, basically anything, is because it's pure inspiration, pure Ruach HaKodesh. Why do the Torah codes that people like Rabbi Matisyahu Glazerson, like he likes to do, why does it work? Right, there's a lot of nourishkeit on the internet. Oh, it's treif. I found that, whatever it is, anything is true from Moby Dick. You don't need the Torah code. And Moby Dick had said that Bob Jones is the Messiah in the year 1964. So, the reason why Torah codes work and why Moby Dick doesn't is because the Torah is literally mochen, intellect, real inspiration. It's just God, right? And we know that God is good. The Zohar in Parshas Truma talks about God is just good, right? When God does something, it lends itself to more goodness. And imagine, this is kind of a rough analogy, but with kids you can understand it a little better. If you give your kid a plate and you say, wow, it's a great plate, and they break it, it falls on the floor and they break it. You say, oh man, my plate. And you say, oh wow, look at that plate. It broke into a piece. That's a little plate, which is better for my kid because he's a small guy. And the shards made a perfect fork and spoon. And I didn't give my kids any utensils in the beginning, and now he has a fork and a spoon and a personalized plate. So the idea that everything that happens in Torah, God creates, the creation gets better. Then we have, it just keeps getting better and better and better. Like a fireworks display that never dims. That's the divinity of God is just good. It's like, it's super mazal. I was walking down the street, met my friend, lo and behold, it's the guy that I owed money to, so now I can pay him back. And he says, hey, now that I have money, let's go to a movie. They go to a movie, and it just gets better and better and better. The inspiration of the Torah is as such. King David is the messianic soul. He is a prophet, but it's not the prophecy of David that really is David. It's his Ruach HaKodesh. It's his divine inspiration that Solomon had it also, which is Song of Songs. It's so good. It's so literally good that when you get into it, it's just true. Song of Songs is everything. That's why it's the Holy of Holies. It just is. If you get into any kind of mochen intellect and you isolate things in the world, you can say, yeah, that's what Song of Songs is talking about. And Song of Songs is derived from the wisdom and inspiration of David. And that is literally the miracle of songs, Tehillim. King David speaks and fruit come out of his mouth. When he writes, Ashrei Ha'ish Asher Lo, the first verse, you should not be shocked that the end letters spell Ashrei. And David would see that and say, that's nice. And he would say, thank God, God is good. And when you get into the Tehillim, and you see how David writes, why does God, the prophecy is not the vision and being told what to say. It's that the words come to him through the inspiration, allowing the real meaning of the word prophecy to come on him. As he writes, he'll say, not this word or that word, this word. And the gematria fits, the end letters fit, all the tools of Pardes fit. This is actually why Rashi is a holy script as well. Rashi is extremely rich. Now you can get the emphasis of the Torah through the words of Rashi because God put the words there that are rich. Through basic choice, but feeling the word. It's very poetic. It's Torah poetry. And King David, if Torah is poetry, David is the king of the poets. And the entire Psalms or Tehillim work is that. It is never devoid of God. God's grace is in every speck of ink in this book. So again, as I turn to the opening verse when I first took this work on, and I said, wow, that's Tehillim? I remember that my first time in yeshiva when I saw a Chiddush in the Talmud, my first day learning Gemara, I told the Gemara Rabbi a Chiddush, and I said, is this Talmud? You can make a Chiddush? Really? Because Talmud is also very inspired. Same thing. The code lends itself to inspiration. It just is a remnant of the Torah of Shem. Just total oral Torah life inspiration. When you see it and you yourself, some little person in this era can make a Chiddush by looking at the words of inspiration, and Rabbi Glazer said he can do Torah codes for the same reason. And it just keeps getting better the more you get into it. The more you study how to do it. You too can get into the Torah. If you ever wanted a reason why are there Gerim, and how is it they can do it, this is why. It's called inspiration. And they are inspired people. It just doesn't come out as poetic Hebrew, Ashrei Aish Asher Lo. It comes out as, Rabbi, why does the Torah say or the people and not the children of Israel? That's an inspired question. An inspired person says that. And it takes an equally inspired person to say, you're right. Let's look it up. Inspiration makes zrizis. The motivation and urgency in high octane like a wrestling match to get in the books and find out. And you find out, you say, you're right. God was with you. God was with the ink that wrote the text. It's not an accident. It's not just a nice word usage. It has meaning and intention. It was planted there by the goodness of God. That's what it is to learn Tehillim. That's why my neshama wanted to go in depth. I knew something was there. Call it a soul connection. I think we're all connected to David in that way. If we really can connect and allow ourselves the emotional honesty to connect there and willingness to say, maybe I can make a Chiddush too. Because King David would not say, I have total rights on my works, get out, go away. If you can have the chutzpah to say, I can make a Chiddush too, then I guarantee you will, especially in the work of Tehillim. It all comes back to that original Ashrei. So there you see in the opening verse, it just already lends itself there. So as I said, that was the first impact of learning this book that I had. And from then on, I called my partner in this back and said, do not think this is going to be done in 2 seconds. It's not. It's going to be a long time. And I went at it verse by verse, just like the Song of Songs. I think it must have been months later I called it and said, hey, we just did Psalm number 1. By the way, there's a blog post about it on Soul Mazal. If you type in, I will search for, I think, Tehillim. I wrote about it. And I wasn't even embarrassed or ashamed to say, it took me 3 months, whatever it was, to do one song. I was happy and said, look, you won't believe what's coming out of this. You won't believe it. Because if you're really committed to putting finding the Chedushim in works, you will. You will. As long as it's Torah, it is inspired. And if it's inspired and you are inspired, you will create and reveal inspiration. Can you get a better definition of Tehillim than that? Does it exist a better definition of Tehillim than that? What David does in his Psalms is as he's requesting to God, just God, everything. Where are you? How are you? Everything, just raw, passionate God. That's called the Mayan Nukvin, the female waters that reach up to God. Just raw energy, God. At the same time, in the very same stroke of the pen that cried out to God, God comes back down in that pen on the page, and he writes in David's words, yes, David, how are you? Meaning that as David is crying out to God, God is whispering to David's head, i.e. his hand and pen. It's a seamless two-way street. As he cries out, he's being answered. And that inspiration is so pure, no matter who you are in the world or what you are, where you are, David is talking to you. In fact, you are talking through David. That means God is talking to you. We've all heard the miracle stories of Psalms Tehillim. And you say, oh, come on. You're making it up. You're reading into it. You're putting the arrow in the tree, then drawing the target around it. That's true in Moby Dick. Not in the words of Torah, all the more so King David Tehillim. He went through what you went through. It's called inspired writing. The pearls of absolute goodness of wisdom. Right? We can accept that when I say a cliche or parable, idiom, well, it's what goes around comes around. Wow, you're right. You're right. But the guy that said that was talking about one thing, and I'm talking about another. And we accept that as a pearl of truth. And nobody will reprimand you. But if King David told you, God, they're chasing after me, and oh, this is horrible. God, where are you? And then God says, I'm coming to, the whole David saga with God, you become a religious freak. Maybe David was a bit of a philosopher. Maybe he was a bit of, the world wisdom of Shem. The life lessons that, if you don't want to call it God, just say life teaches you. Only David knew to call it God. He knew what God was. Everything about God. That's how he's able to cry, God. Because he knows God. And here, you want to make a chiddush? You know God too. You do too. You just don't know. Maybe that's called God. Hashem, whatever you want to use. David uses names of God as an intention in his writing. He uses different forms of the word God. Now, Moses did it also in the Torah, but that was prophetic. Right? And you might not understand the prophetic so much. Right? If I said, my name is Rav David Katz Shlita, you might say, okay, I got the Rav. What is Shlita? I don't know. Because I put it on you. I'm saying, I am, But David in Psalms, he uses the godly language. He uses the real code. Names of God, names of people, word usage. Moses knew the vocabulary of the Torah. The vessels were in him to speak God's language. So God inspired Moses, and Moses said, I know that word. This is Ruach Elokim. Got it. David was able to penetrate, let's say, the mind of God and know the words. The difference is, it's coming from the side of man. David is your representative to say, hey, you, I know what you're going through. That's the name of God, Elohim. No one will tell you that. They'll call it G-O-D, God. And you say, well, what do? We just trust you? But you read the words, for all intents and purposes, you call it God. Okay, David, I don't get Elohim, what you mean, but God. But in God's response to David, that's the inspiration. David was inspired and drew the goodness of God onto you. Because when God answers David, you say, I get that. Is that what David meant? Irrelevant. As far as you're concerned, it is. And that's what our verse in our tale number 72 is about. David drew the goodness and bounty of God onto the world. And he bestows this on to Solomon his son. That's how you know when you have Mashiach, says King David in our Psalms. That's how you know it's the true Torah. Does it fix the world? Everyone says, well, it was this guy's the Messiah, it was that guy, and they say, well, did they build the Beis HaMikdash? You want to know how to build the temple? When the world builds it. How will the world ever build it? The kingdom of David, Malchus Beis David. How do you get Malchus Beis David? The kingdom of the house of David. When David's inspiration goes up and God's inspiration comes down. You are a king of David if that's what happens. That is the kingdom of David. His mouth goes up, God's mouth comes down. God speaks the bounty into creation. When that fills the world, that's called the world is filled with the knowledge of God. And so we started the works, and the Psalms continued. Months rolled on, years rolled on. I felt a bit guilty over the years, but I always knew this. I told this project, don't stop it. We have to keep going here. This Torah is at least changing my life. And all the things that I'm involved in, Solmazal, Noahides, Gerim, and Torah lessons, and articles, and this and that. And everyone has their piece. I quote this Noahide in this article, and that article I quote that Noahide, and we talk on Skype, and everyone's happy. We're all getting along, and the Torah's flowing. Everyone says, it was this Chiddush, it was that, and wow, we really worked together well. And I've always said, and I will not stop saying this, the trump card behind, at least my personal inspiration, and what I'm doing, if that's worth anything, is Tehillim. This project has been my little battery keeping me going. Just knowing that David is divine and true, in the back of my mind, if I ever have a problem, I'm really stuck, okay, let's go open Tehillim and see what King David's got to offer now. It's a real offering, going up and coming down. And it never ceases to amaze. Not once have I been let down. Not by King David, by God's response. If there's ever an Urim V'Tumim, a Choshen, the breastplate of the Kohen, which David's called a Kohen, by the way, Psalms 110, this is it. You press the buttons and the illumination comes. It has always been there. If you ever need a security blanket, he's the one. But again, if you're going to do it half-baked, you're wasting your time. Just like 20 years ago. Waste of time. On the surface, waste of time. If you're not going to get into the pardes of it and really hash it out, where is the inspiration? What is the mochin, the intellect coming down to the point it enters the heart? Then move on. But if you really want to connect to God, know God, feel God's presence, this is it. It doesn't need to be all day, every day. And that's, again, why I decided this will be a many years project. But it's been going. Then they ticked over. We had 10. And then we finished the first book. And I'm excited. And we're doing the first book. And let's keep going. Let's do this. I don't know where it's going, I would say. And then I got finally towards the end of book 2, which culminates with Psalm 72. And King David says this is the end of the book, actually. Now, it goes to 150, but for some reason, David says 72 is where it really ends. As I approached the 70s, I said, you know what? Noahides and Gerim, and King David says openly that the Messianic Torah is the Noahide law. You defeat Gog v'Magog from Noahide law. David in 72 bestows on Solomon, which we're supposed to do today, but you see this is going to be many lectures. I see the way this is, because why? Again, I guess it was proven, inspiration of King David. The Torah he charges to King Solomon is Noahide, Ger, code, essence of Tanakh and God. And he ends on that note. If you want to know what 72 is about without me teaching it, it's King David says, Solomon, Noahide laws. Know them well, and bring the bounty on the universe by standing up for the poor of Israel, i.e., code euphemism for the Ger. Let the men of nobility come unto Jerusalem with all their bounty to see your wisdom, and that wisdom is predicated on the knowledge of Torah through Ger code Torah. You do that, they'll all praise God. They praise God, that's the Mashiach. Ein Mashiach liYisrael. The real Redeemer is God. Your kingdom will bring peace on earth. That's what I want you to do. So as I got to that, I said, we've had the Ger series. We've done all these things. And, this isn't about the Jew and the Ger. Ger is just a word. Jew is just a word. There's a bigger word called mankind and humanity. It breaks down the barriers of religion, race, color, whatever you want to call where you're from, language. It's about how do we all exist on this planet? It's called universal Torah. The Ger is just a conduit, an opening that allows you to see the Torah universally for the first time. Once you have that, you're ready for a universal message. And that is what David's Torah is. That's what the Beis HaMikdash is. It is the universal message for mankind. So Shabbos is also that. The Ger keeping Shabbos is that. So Noahide is the blanket term. Ger is the denomination. The inspiration is King David, universal Torah. If you want to really get into Shabbos, you want to know the secret how? Make a meal Friday night. And when the kids go to bed and it's late, really late, it's called Tikkun Chatzos, the repair of night. Repair of the kingdom comes at night. Sit back, open up Psalms, and please grab a commentary. Whatever it is, print from the internet, do what you have to do, and meditate and think into the inspired words of King David. What does he mean in every verse? Look at the words. Go over them. And that will bring out the Shabbos in you, I guarantee it. It's impossible not to. Impossible not to. So as I saw that that's really what the dynamic is, I said, let's hold off on the Shabbos and what we do and this and that. Let's bring in the real message. Now that we're open, the hearts are open and circumcised, let's bring the universal Torah of King David to the forefront. And with that said, I present to you the first class of Tehillim in depth. In Hebrew, it's Tehillim Be'iyun. This has been a project for a long time, and I don't intend on stopping anytime soon. That's the introduction of what this work is, and a background. And I urge everyone to come on Wednesday nights, for at least for the time being. And next week we'll start actually with the Torah of 72, with a proper introduction to Rabbi Baruch, who's behind this. He's been with me on this a long time, and we're going to properly introduce the dedication of the work in right into Psalm 72, going into next week. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the introduction of what this work is. I hope you're inspired. I know I am. I know Rabbi Baruch is. And stay tuned for many great things to come out of this. It's not even a question. It's a fact. This will be a great work. And I'm saying that with absolute confidence. So again, thank you very much. See you next time. And we'll get into the immense depth of 72. With by the way, for anybody wanting to know what we're doing, it's the commentary Shai Lamora. It's a Hebrew work of a compilation of the inspired works of the Mikros Gedolos, kind of a pieced together commentary that flows. It's an amazing work. It's Shai Lamora in Hebrew on Psalms. It's amazing. It's not in English, I'm sorry, but we will be covering what he feels is the best flow of the classic commentaries to King David, and he has amazing bracha in this because it just works. It literally just works. It's not his own commentary. He brings the collected classics in a flowing manner. So again, see you next time, and we will properly introduce and dedicate the ceremonial launch into Psalm 72 and the nature of what this work began. And see you guys next time. Thank you very much. Questions, comments, or feedback, I can be reached again at Rabbi Katz at virtualyeshiva.com. And please keep with it. This is going to be an amazing work. See you.